So let's say you're the kind of Jew that really understands God and really believes that God gave the Torah on Mount Sinai. And you believe that God knows what's best for us, what's best for the world. And therefore you want to follow all of God's commandments. But you say to yourself, great, I want to follow God's commandments. I want to do what it says in the Torah. But that's it. I don't do what the rabbis tell me to do. I don't want to do what all the laws of the Talmud, all these extra laws, all these stringencies, and all these extra things that the rabbis of the Talmud told us to do. I don't want to do those. What do they know? Yes, at the time, maybe they were considered wise and they understood how to interpret what God wanted from them during their time, under their circumstances. But today, we live in a completely different world, under a completely different set of circumstances. So all these laws of the Talmud, all these laws of the rabbis, they're not for me. I don't want to do them. I don't see a point in them. So this understanding is based on a fundamental flaw in how to understand where the laws of the Talmud actually come from. Now, there are two types of laws in the Talmud. There's rabbinic stringencies, which we're not going to discuss today. And then there are the laws that were derived from the oral Torah. See, the Mishnah in Pirkei Avot, our sages teach us, Moshe kibel Torah Sinai. Moses received from God the Torah on Mount Sinai. Now, this Torah that he received, it says that he transferred it over, umasruah lezakenim, he gave it over to the elders, and this is referring to oral transmission. There were two parts to the Torah. God gave the Torah in a written form and in an oral form. And they're not the same thing. They're different, but they complement each other. And each one requires the other one. Because the written Torah is like a concise, shorthand version of the Torah. It's a place where we can consolidate all the aspects of the Torah, all the different pieces, moving pieces of the Torah, and put it all together in one concise framework in the 5 books of Moses. Very difficult to understand. Very concise. God did that because he wanted us to have an easy way to make sure we don't forget what's written in the Torah. At the same time, he didn't want to give everything in a written book. And we'll explain why he did that next time. And therefore, he gave, in the oral law, he gave the code, he gave the explanation, the way to understand and the way to open up and to expand what is written in the written Torah. He gave us rules. He gave us principles of how to understand things. When two concepts are put next to each other, they mean something. When something is specified and then expanded and then specified again, that means something else. There are many, many different rules of how to interpret the laws of the Torah. And the oral law is not a set of laws that were made up and written by the rabbis. On the contrary, they are just as divine, just as biblical as the written law. And the oral law is something that God gave Moses on Mount Sinai in order to help him and help us through transmission from generation to generation understand what it says in the Torah. So for example, the laws of Shabbat. It says in the Torah, do not do work. How do we define work? What does work mean? Work to me is different than work to you. How do you define work? Is sewing work? Is stitching work? Is weaving work? Is plowing work? Is planting work? Is dyeing fabric work? Is caring in a public domain work? These are all laws that are prohibited in Shabbat. The answer is there's a Torah principle that we use here from the oral law that teaches us. It says, you shall not do work in Shabbat, and that's put next to the commandment to build a Mishkan. And because they are connected to each other in the Torah, the rabbis understood, based on a biblical principle in the oral law, that the categories of work that were done in the building of the Mishkan are the ones that are prohibited from doing on Shabbat. And we have 39 categories. And they're listed in the Talmud, but that doesn't mean they were made up by the rabbis. They were given over and understood through the transmission of the oral law. Now, a proof for this, from a Talmudic perspective, is that rabbinic laws do not have the death penalty. There's no death penalty for rabbinic law. The only death penalty in the Torah is for biblical laws. One of the laws that have the death penalty is Shabbat. And included in the death penalty, transgression of any of the 39 categories of malacha, of work, are all included in the death penalty. Now, these are not written in the Torah. They are derived in the Talmud. Yet, still, we see that they're given the death penalty because the Talmud sees them as biblical and has the same stringencies as the biblical laws. I hope you learned something new, and I hope this was informative. Next time, we will talk about why God split up the Torah. Why didn't he just write the entire Torah as in a written form? All the biblical and oral law, all the written law and the oral law all together, and have a massive encyclopedia so we can have it all written down. Why did God feel the necessity to write it in a concise way and then transfer over the rest through oral transmission? What was the purpose of that? It wasn't just to get us confused. There is a reason, and we'll discuss that next time.